Coastal waters can appear serene, yet they often hide swift, unseen forces capable of turning joy into chaos. Simple stunts, late-night swims, or even calm boat rides can shift without warning into frenzied struggles for survival when predators emerge from the depths. From 3 jetpack riders ambushed near Santa Barbara to a fatal underwater modeling shoot in Queensland, each account reveals the razor-thin line between leisure and terror. In this video, we'll uncover 6 chilling encounters where ordinary outings ended in desperate fights for life. The coastal waters off Santa Barbara, California, had always been a playground for thrill-seekers. But on September 1st, 2025, those pristine waves nearly became a graveyard. The area, known for its consistent offshore winds and relatively calm morning conditions, had become increasingly popular among extreme sports enthusiasts. Local marine biologists had noted an uptick in seal populations along the nearby Channel Islands, which inevitably drew larger predators closer to shore during the late summer months. Ethan Walker, a 29-year-old aerospace engineer from San Diego, had been perfecting his jetpack techniques for nearly 3 years. His companions that morning were equally experienced. Lila Morgan, a 26-year-old stunt coordinator from Los Angeles, and Tyler Chen, a 31-year-old former Navy pilot turned extreme sports instructor. The trio had planned their session for dawn, when tourist boat traffic remained minimal, and wind conditions provided optimal stability for their aerial maneuvers. Walker had invested considerable time researching the perfect location for their most ambitious routine yet. The plan involved synchronized barrel rolls, water-skimming passes, and formation flying that would push their equipment to its limits. Each rider carried military-grade jetpacks capable of sustained flight for up to 12 minutes, with emergency flotation systems and GPS tracking devices as safety measures. The morning began flawlessly. Morgan executed a series of tight spirals approximately 15 feet above the water's surface, her jetpack's exhaust creating small steam clouds as it interacted with the cool ocean air. Chen demonstrated his signature move, diving to within inches of the waves before pulling up sharply in a vertical climb. Walker focused on maintaining formation while recording their stunts with a helmet-mounted camera system. 23 minutes into their session, Chen attempted his most challenging maneuver, a double-spin dive that would take him directly through the jetpack wash of his companions. He initiated the rotation at 40 feet altitude, building momentum as he descended. The mathematical precision required for such a stunt left little margin for error, and Chen had practiced the timing countless times in simulators. However, a minor turbulence pocket created by Walker's jetpack exhaust disrupted Chen's stabilization system mid-spin. His gyroscope readings fluctuated wildly as he fought to regain control, but the centrifugal force had already committed him to the descent trajectory. Chen managed to activate his emergency stabilizers, but the correction came too late. He struck the water's surface at approximately 30 miles per hour, his jetpack's thrust immediately cut by the impact sensors. The saltwater was surprisingly cold for early September, and Chen found himself momentarily disoriented as his life vest automatically inflated. His jetpack, now waterlogged and useless, dragged him down briefly before the emergency release mechanism activated. He surfaced sputtering approximately 60 yards from shore, while Walker and Morgan circled overhead, shouting instructions about swimming toward the beach. What none of them noticed was the massive shadow gliding through the deeper water beyond the kelp beds. The great white shark measured approximately 15 feet in length and weighed close to 3,000 pounds. It had been tracking a wounded sea lion for the better part of an hour when the sudden disturbance above caught its attention. The predator's electroreceptors detected Chen's elevated heart rate and the unusual electromagnetic signatures from the waterlogged jetpack equipment. Chen had managed to swim roughly 20 yards toward shore when he felt something brush against his legs. Initially dismissing it as kelp, he continued his steady stroke pattern while calling out to his companions that he was uninjured. Walker and Morgan had descended to approximately 10 feet above the water, preparing to attempt a rescue maneuver they had practiced, but never executed in real conditions. The shark struck with devastating speed and precision. Chen's world exploded into chaos as massive jaws clamped around both his legs just above the knees. The initial bite pressure, estimated later at over 4,000 pounds per square inch, crushed through his wetsuit material and into flesh. The shark's serrated teeth, each measuring up to 3 inches in length, penetrated deep tissue as the predator began its characteristic thrashing motion designed to disorient and weaken prey. Walker and Morgan watched in horror as their friend disappeared beneath a churning mass of white water and blood. Morgan immediately descended to water level, using her jetpack's downward thrust to create maximum splash and noise. Walker circled frantically, shouting tactical instructions while trying to position himself for a potential rescue attempt. Underwater, Chen fought against primal terror as the shark dragged him deeper. The predator's dead black eyes, each the size of a tennis ball, stared at him with ancient hunger. Chen managed to grab the shark's snout with both hands, pushing upward while kicking with his injured legs. The pain was extraordinary, but adrenaline provided temporary strength. Walker made a split-second decision that would later be called either incredibly brave or completely reckless. He shut down his jetpack and dropped directly into the water beside the attack site, carrying the pack's metal stabilizer bar as an improvised weapon. The bar, designed to prevent equipment damage during hard landings, measured 3 feet in length and weighed 12 pounds. As Chen and the shark breached the surface in a violent spray of foam and blood, Walker drove the stabilizer bar directly into the predator's gill slits. The shark's grip loosened momentarily, allowing Chen to break free and swim desperately toward Morgan, who had positioned herself as close to the water as her hovering jetpack would allow. The great white circled once, its primitive brain processing this unusual encounter. Walker continued striking at the water with his improvised weapon while Morgan created maximum surface disturbance with her jetpack's thrust. After what felt like hours but lasted perhaps 90 seconds, the shark's dorsal fin disappeared into deeper water. Coast Guard rescue boats, alerted by the GPS emergency signals from their equipment, arrived within 12 minutes. Chen was airlifted to a trauma center with severe lacerations to both legs, substantial blood loss, and symptoms of shock. Walker suffered minor cuts from debris, while Morgan escaped physically unharmed but deeply traumatized. Marine biologists later confirmed that great white shark activity had increased dramatically along the California coast that week, with multiple sightings reported from Monterey to San Diego. Experts theorized that unusual water temperatures and abundant prey had drawn larger predators closer to shore than typically observed. All 3 riders survived the encounter, though Chen required extensive reconstructive surgery and months of rehabilitation. The incident prompted new safety protocols for extreme water sports, including mandatory shark spotting procedures and emergency response training. Walker and Morgan never flew together again, each pursuing safer hobbies far from the ocean's unpredictable dangers. The pristine waters surrounding the coral formations near Queensland, Australia, had long served as a backdrop for high-end fashion photography. On October 5, 2021, these same crystal-clear depths would become the site of one of the most tragic underwater modeling incidents in recent history. The area, renowned for its exceptional visibility extending beyond 60 meters, attracted photographers from around the globe seeking to capture ethereal underwater imagery. Maya Collins, a 26-year-old fashion model from Brisbane, had built her career on specialized underwater shoots. Her ability to hold her breath for extended periods and move gracefully while submerged made her highly sought after in the niche market of aquatic fashion photography. The project that brought her to these remote waters was an ambitious collaboration with renowned photographer Sebastian Hartwell and his assistant team of 5 experienced divers. Hartwell had spent months planning the shoot, which involved capturing Collins in flowing designer gowns that would create dramatic silhouettes against the coral backdrop. The concept required Collins to descend to approximately 20 feet below the surface, where the interplay of natural light and fabric movement would create the desired artistic effect. Safety protocols included multiple dive masters, emergency oxygen supplies, and constant communication via underwater hand signals. The morning conditions appeared ideal for their ambitious project. Water temperature held steady at 26 degrees Celsius, with minimal current and exceptional visibility. Collins had completed her safety briefing and equipment check, wearing a specially designed weighted belt that would allow her to achieve neutral buoyancy while maintaining graceful movement in the flowing gowns. The first series of shots proceeded flawlessly. Collins descended gracefully, her emerald silk dress billowing around her like liquid mercury. Hartwell positioned himself 15 feet away, his underwater camera housing capturing the interplay of sunlight filtering through the fabric. The assistant divers maintained their positions around the perimeter, monitoring both Collins and the surrounding water for any potential hazards. 23 minutes into the session, Collins was preparing for her most challenging pose. The sequence required her to suspend herself horizontally at 20 feet depth, arms extended upward toward the surface, while the gown's fabric created an otherworldly silhouette. Hartwell had calculated the lighting angles precisely, and the entire team held their positions to capture what they anticipated would be the signature image of the collection. The tiger shark approached from the deeper water beyond the coral formation, drawn by the unusual activity, and surface splashing from the support boat above. Measuring approximately 13 feet in length, the predator moved with the calculated precision of an apex hunter that had survived decades in these waters. Its distinctive striped pattern remained partially camouflaged against the shifting light patterns filtering down from the surface. Collins was fully focused on maintaining her pose when the attack occurred. The shark struck with devastating speed, its powerful jaws clamping around her legs with crushing force. The impact sent shockwaves through the water as Collins was violently yanked from her suspended position. Her carefully controlled breathing technique immediately collapsed as panic and pain overwhelmed her system. Hartwell and his dive team witnessed the attack unfold in horrifying slow motion. The photographer immediately dropped his camera equipment and swam toward Collins, while his assistants began striking their dive tanks with metal objects to create noise and distraction. The metallic clanging echoed through the water as the team deployed every deterrent technique they had trained for. The tiger shark's thrashing intensified as it dragged Collins deeper toward the coral formation. Her flowing gown, which had created such beautiful imagery moments before, now tangled around both predator and victim. The silk fabric restricted Collins' movements while potentially confusing the shark's sensory systems. Two of the dive masters reached the attack site and began striking the shark with their diving knives and camera equipment. The predator's hide proved remarkably resistant to their desperate attempts at intervention. Collins disappeared beneath the shark's bulk as it continued its characteristic side-to-side thrashing motion. After nearly 90 seconds of chaos, the tiger shark released its grip and retreated toward deeper water. The dive team immediately surrounded Collins, but her injuries proved catastrophic. Despite their advanced training and immediate response, the combination of massive trauma and prolonged submersion had proven fatal. The emergency ascent and surface rescue procedures were executed flawlessly, but Collins was pronounced dead upon reaching the support vessel. The entire attack had been inadvertently captured on Hartwell's underwater cameras, providing marine biologists with unprecedented footage of tiger shark predatory behavior in shallow reef environments. Australian authorities later confirmed unusually high tiger shark activity throughout the region that month. Marine biologists theorized that changing water temperatures and abundant fish populations had drawn larger predators into areas typically considered safe for diving activities. The incident prompted immediate changes to underwater photography safety protocols, including mandatory shark spotting procedures and the presence of armed dive masters during all commercial shoots in open water environments. Hartwell discontinued underwater fashion photography following the tragedy, while Collins's family established a foundation promoting water safety education. The incident remains one of the most documented fatal shark attacks in Australian waters, serving as a sobering reminder that even controlled professional environments cannot eliminate the inherent risks of entering the ocean's domain. The remote coral formations off the coast of Palawan, Philippines, had remained largely unexplored by commercial diving operations as of September 2024. These pristine reefs, located nearly 40 kilometers from the nearest fishing village, harbored some of the most diverse marine ecosystems in Southeast Asia. The area's isolation meant that large predators still patrolled these waters with minimal human interference, creating an environment where ancient hunting patterns remained undisturbed. Ramon del Rosario, a 33-year-old spearfishing guide from Manila, had built his reputation on accessing fishing grounds that other guides considered too remote or dangerous. His clients paid premium rates for the opportunity to hunt in waters where massive groupers and other trophy fish remained abundant. Del Rosario's expertise in nighttime spearfishing set him apart from conventional guides, as he understood that certain species became more accessible under the cover of darkness. The expedition that brought Del Rosario to these waters involved a wealthy businessman seeking to land a record-sized grouper. The client had specifically requested a midnight dive, having researched reports that suggested the largest specimens emerged from deep reef caves only during nighttime hours. Del Rosario had agreed to the unusual timing, despite his general preference for dawn hunting sessions. Del Rosario descended alone into the inky water at approximately 11:47 p.m., carrying only a high-powered dive light, his custom spear gun, and 40 minutes of air supply. His strategy involved locating the deep reef caves where large groupers typically sheltered, then using his light to disorient the fish long enough to achieve a clean kill shot. The technique required exceptional diving skills and intimate knowledge of fish behavior patterns. The water temperature at 30 feet depth measured 28 degrees Celsius, with virtually no current and unlimited visibility within his light beam's range. Del Rosario had identified a promising cave formation during his afternoon reconnaissance dive, noting signs of large fish activity, including disturbed sediment and territorial markings on the coral surfaces. 43 minutes into his dive, Del Rosario located his target. A massive Queensland grouper, weighing an estimated 120 pounds, hovered motionless near the cave entrance. The fish appeared unaware of his presence as he maneuvered into position for the killing shot. Del Rosario steadied his breathing and aligned his spear gun's sight with the grouper's vital area behind the gills. The spear struck perfectly, penetrating deep into the fish's body cavity. The wounded grouper immediately began its death throes, thrashing violently while blood dispersed through the water column. Del Rosario secured his catch line and began the process of subduing the massive fish, a procedure that typically required several minutes of careful handling to prevent equipment damage or injury. The hammerhead shark detected the disturbance from approximately 200 meters away. The 10-foot predator had been patrolling the reef's outer edge when Del Rosario's dive light and the grouper's death struggle triggered its hunting instincts. Hammerheads possessed exceptional sensory capabilities in low-light conditions, and the combination of electromagnetic signatures from the dive equipment and chemical traces from the wounded fish created an irresistible stimulus. Del Rosario was focused entirely on securing his catch when the shark's distinctive silhouette entered his light beam. The hammerhead's bizarre head structure, with eyes positioned at the extreme ends of its flattened skull, gave it an almost alien appearance in the artificial illumination. The predator approached with the confident movements of an apex hunter that had encountered no significant threats in these waters. The attack occurred without warning as Del Rosario attempted to swim toward the surface with his prize. The hammerhead struck from his blind spot, its jaws clamping around his shoulder and the upper portion of his diving vest. The impact knocked Del Rosario sideways into the coral formation, his dive light spinning wildly and creating disorienting flashes of illumination. The shark's teeth, though smaller than those of other species, proved devastatingly effective at penetrating diving equipment. Del Rosario felt his vest's inflation system rupture as the hammerhead shook him violently from side to side. His spear gun was torn from his grasp along with the prize grouper that had attracted the predator initially. Del Rosario fought back using the only weapons available, his dive knife and his remaining physical strength. He managed to strike the shark multiple times across its sensitive snout area, while simultaneously kicking against the coral to prevent being dragged into deeper water. The hammerhead's grip loosened momentarily, allowing Del Rosario to break free from its jaws. However, the predator's hunting instincts remained fully engaged. The hammerhead circled repeatedly in the narrow confines of the reef formation, its movements becoming increasingly agitated as it attempted to relocate its escaped prey. Del Rosario's dive light, still functioning despite the attack, created moving shadows that seemed to confuse the shark's navigation systems. After nearly 3 minutes of cat-and-mouse maneuvering through the coral maze, the hammerhead finally retreated into the open water beyond the reef. Del Rosario surfaced immediately, his emergency whistle creating piercing signals that carried across the calm night air. His support boat crew, who had been monitoring his dive schedule, reached his position within 8 minutes. Del Rosario survived the encounter with severe lacerations to his shoulder and upper arm, requiring immediate evacuation to a hospital in Puerto Princesa. Local authorities later confirmed multiple hammerhead sightings in the area throughout September 2019, suggesting that seasonal feeding patterns had drawn these normally deep-water predators into shallower reef environments. The incident effectively ended Del Rosario's career as a spearfishing guide, though he recovered fully from his injuries. He subsequently established a diving safety training program emphasizing the unique risks associated with nighttime spearfishing in predator-rich waters. The attack remains one of the few documented hammerhead encounters with recreational divers in Philippine waters. The waters surrounding Gansbai, South Africa, have earned their reputation as one of the world's most concentrated great white shark hunting grounds. This coastal region, often referred to by marine biologists as the white shark capital of the world, attracted both cage diving tourists and serious sport fishermen seeking to experience encounters with apex predators in their natural environment. The area's unique underwater topography created ideal conditions for seal colonies, which in turn supported healthy populations of massive great whites. On February 5, 2023, Marcus van Heerden, a 28-year-old engineering student from Cape Town, had organized the fishing expedition as a celebration of his recent graduation. His companions for the day included his childhood friend Peter Kruger and university roommate David Chen, both experienced recreational fishermen who had joined Van Heerden on numerous previous trips along the South African coast. The trio had chartered a modest 24-foot sport fishing vessel, equipped with standard safety equipment and enough supplies for a full day on the water. Van Heerden had specifically chosen the Gansbaai area despite its reputation for shark activity, believing that the abundant marine life would provide exceptional fishing opportunities. Local charter operators had briefed them on basic shark safety protocols, though the emphasis remained on locating productive fishing spots rather than predator avoidance. The morning conditions appeared ideal, with minimal wind and excellent visibility extending beyond the harbor mouth. The first 4 hours of fishing proved moderately successful, with the group landing several yellowtail and a small tuna. Van Heerden demonstrated particular enthusiasm for the technical aspects of deep-sea angling, frequently adjusting their position to optimize fishing conditions based on his understanding of underwater currents and fish behavior patterns. His engineering background had instilled a methodical approach to problem-solving that translated well to sport fishing strategy. At approximately 2:15 p.m., Van Heerden was attempting to secure a tangled fishing line that had become wrapped around the boat's stern cleat. The line had snagged during their previous catch, creating a complex knot that threatened to damage their equipment if not properly addressed. Kruger and Chen continued fishing from the bow, while Van Heerden worked methodically to untangle the mess without cutting the expensive braided line. The great white shark that had been tracking their boat measured approximately 17 feet in length and weighed close to 4,000 pounds. Marine biologists would later estimate its age at over 20 years, making it a mature adult that had survived decades in these predator-rich waters. The shark had been following the scent trail created by their fish catch, along with the electromagnetic signatures generated by the boat's engine and electronic equipment. Van Heerden was leaning over the stern rail, both hands occupied with the tangled fishing line. When the predator struck, the massive shark launched itself from the depths with extraordinary force, its momentum carrying its bulk partially out of the water as it collided with the boat's hull. The impact generated a thunderous crash that could be heard over a kilometer away, while the vessel rocked violently from the collision. The force of the strike knocked Van Heerden completely off balance, sending him tumbling headfirst into the churning water beside the boat. Kruger and Chen witnessed their friend's fall with growing horror as they realized the shark remained in the immediate vicinity. The predator's dorsal fin, easily the size of a dinner plate, circled ominously around Van Heerden as he struggled to swim back toward the boat. Van Heerden managed to call out once before the shark struck again. This time, the great white attacked with the calculated precision of a seasoned hunter, its massive jaws engulfing Van Heerden's torso with crushing force. The attack occurred less than 10 meters from the boat, allowing Kruger and Chen to witness every horrific detail as their friend disappeared beneath the roiling surface. Both survivors immediately began shouting and striking the water with fishing equipment in a desperate attempt to distract the predator. Chen deployed the boat's emergency flares while Kruger activated their radio distress beacon, though they realized that help could not arrive in time to save Van Heerden. The shark's thrashing movements created a spreading slick of blood that attracted additional predators from the surrounding area. The great white surfaced briefly with Van Heerden still clenched in its jaws, the victim showing no signs of movement or consciousness. The shark then dove toward deeper water, dragging its prey beyond the reach of any rescue attempt. Kruger and Chen continued their distress calls while scanning the surface for any sign of their friend, though they understood the futility of their efforts. South African Maritime Rescue Services arrived at the scene within 37 minutes of receiving the distress call. By that time, multiple shark fins were visible in the area, drawn by the blood and commotion. The rescue team conducted an extensive search pattern covering several square kilometers, but Van Heerden's body was never recovered. Marine authorities later confirmed that great white activity had reached unusually high levels throughout the region. Several factors contributed to this phenomenon, including abundant seal populations, optimal water temperatures, and minimal commercial fishing pressure. The incident prompted immediate changes to local charter boat safety protocols, including mandatory shark spotting procedures and enhanced emergency response equipment. Kruger and Chen both testified at the subsequent maritime safety inquiry, providing detailed accounts that helped investigators understand the attack sequence. Both survivors required extensive counseling to address the psychological trauma of witnessing their friend's death. The incident remains one of the most thoroughly documented fatal great white attacks in South African waters, serving as a sobering reminder of the risks inherent in recreational boating within known predator habitats. The coastal waters surrounding British Columbia had witnessed unusual orca behavior throughout the summer of 2025, with marine biologists documenting increasingly bold interactions between killer whales and recreational watercraft. These incidents, occurring primarily in the Strait of Georgia and surrounding channels, represented a significant departure from the typically predictable behavior patterns that had characterized orca populations for decades. Local authorities had issued advisories warning boaters and swimmers to maintain increased vigilance when encountering whale pods. Liam O'Connor, a 32-year-old marine photographer from Vancouver, had dedicated his career to documenting orca behavior in their natural habitat. His portfolio included some of the most striking underwater images of killer whales ever captured in Pacific Northwest waters. O'Connor's technique involved patient observation from small watercraft, allowing him to predict pod movements and position himself for optimal photographic opportunities without disrupting the animal's natural behaviors. The expedition that brought O'Connor to these waters on July 14th involved a collaborative project with marine biologists studying orca communication patterns. His companions included research assistant Sarah Mackenzie and graduate student Thomas Hartwell, both experienced in whale observation protocols. Their small research vessel carried hydrophone equipment for recording whale vocalizations, along with standard safety gear for extended periods on the water. O'Connor had identified a pod of 7 orcas moving slowly through the channel, including 2 large males whose distinctive dorsal fins measured over 6 feet in height. The pod's relaxed swimming pattern and frequent surface breathing suggested they were engaged in social behavior rather than active hunting, creating ideal conditions for close observation and photography. Weather conditions remained calm with excellent underwater visibility extending beyond 20 meters. The team had maintained their observation position for approximately 2 hours when O'Connor decided to enter the water for underwater photography. His wetsuit provided adequate thermal protection for the 15-degree water temperature, while his underwater camera housing would allow him to document the pod's behavior from below the surface. Mackenzie and Hartwell remained aboard the research vessel, monitoring both O'Connor's position and the pod's movements through binoculars. O'Connor entered the water roughly 50 meters from the pod's estimated position, using snorkel gear to maintain surface breathing while positioning himself for underwater shots. The orcas appeared completely indifferent to his presence initially, continuing their social interactions without alteration to their swimming patterns. O'Connor began photographing the pod from a respectful distance, using his camera's telephoto capabilities to avoid approaching too closely. The largest male orca, measuring approximately 26 feet in length and weighing an estimated 8 tons, began exhibiting curious behavior toward O'Connor after 12 minutes of observation. The massive predator approached slowly, its intelligent eyes clearly focused on the human floating at the surface. O'Connor maintained his position while documenting this unprecedented interaction, believing the encounter represented valuable scientific data. The orca's initial contact involved a gentle nudge with its distinctive, rounded snout, a behavior that marine biologists classify as investigative rather than aggressive. O'Connor reported later that the animal's skin felt surprisingly smooth and warm despite the cold water temperature. The killer whale circled once before approaching for a second, more forceful investigation that knocked O'Connor several meters sideways. The situation escalated dramatically when the orca suddenly clamped its massive jaws around O'Connor's leg just above the knee. The predator's teeth, each measuring over 3 inches in length, punctured through the wetsuit material and into flesh. O'Connor immediately understood that he was experiencing the first documented orca attack on a human in British Columbia waters, though he later admitted that his scientific training prevented panic during the initial moments. The orca's bite pressure, though potentially capable of severing limbs, remained relatively controlled compared to the animal's full capabilities. Marine biologists theorized that the killer whale was treating O'Connor as an object of curiosity rather than prey, though the distinction provided little comfort during the attack itself. O'Connor struck the orca's snout repeatedly, while kicking with his free leg in an attempt to escape. Mackenzie and Hartwell witnessed the attack from their research vessel and immediately began implementing emergency protocols. Mackenzie activated their marine radio, while Hartwell prepared rescue equipment and started the engine for a rapid approach to O'Connor's position. Both observers noted that the other pod members remained at a distance, suggesting the attack represented individual behavior rather than coordinated hunting. The orca released its grip after approximately 45 seconds, during which time O'Connor sustained deep lacerations and significant tissue damage. The predator retreated to rejoin its pod, which resumed normal swimming patterns as if the incident had never occurred. O'Connor swam desperately toward the research vessel while Mackenzie and Hartwell coordinated his rescue from the water. Emergency medical treatment began immediately aboard the research vessel, with Mackenzie applying pressure bandages to control bleeding while Hartwell radioed for Coast Guard assistance. O'Connor remained conscious throughout the rescue, providing detailed observations about the attack that would later prove valuable to marine behaviorists studying the incident. Canadian Coast Guard vessels reached their position within 23 minutes, transferring O'Connor to a hospital for emergency surgery. His injuries required extensive reconstruction of damaged muscle tissue and several months of rehabilitation, though he retained full use of his leg. The attack left distinctive tooth marks that marine biologists used to identify the specific individual responsible. Subsequent investigation revealed that the attacking orca belonged to a transient pod known for unusual behavior patterns, including documented interactions with recreational boats and fishing vessels. Marine authorities implemented temporary restrictions on recreational activities in areas where this particular pod had been sighted, though the restrictions proved controversial among whale-watching operators. O'Connor eventually returned to marine photography, though he discontinued underwater work involving large marine mammals. His detailed account of the attack provided researchers with unprecedented insight into orca behavior during human interactions. The incident highlighted the need for enhanced safety protocols when working in close proximity to killer whale populations, particularly given the increasing frequency of unusual encounters throughout the Pacific Northwest. The tidal estuaries surrounding Darwin, Northern Australia, represented some of the most biodiverse wetland ecosystems in the Southern Hemisphere as of March 2025. These brackish waterways, where freshwater rivers merged with saltwater tides, created unique environmental conditions that supported an extraordinary variety of marine life. However, the same factors that made these waters ecologically rich also attracted some of Australia's most dangerous predators, including crocodiles and various shark species that thrived in the murky, nutrient-rich environment. Jackson Reed, a 22-year-old adventure tourism guide from Brisbane, had built his reputation on leading kayaking expeditions through remote waterways that conventional tour operators considered too challenging or risky. His clients sought authentic wilderness experiences far from crowded tourist destinations, and Reed's expertise in reading water conditions and wildlife behavior made him highly sought after among serious adventure enthusiasts. The expedition that brought him to these particular waters involved a group of experienced kayakers seeking to photograph rare bird species that nested in the remote mangrove formations. Reed had scouted these estuaries during the previous dry season, mapping safe passages through the complex network of channels and identifying optimal wildlife viewing locations. The area remained largely unexplored by commercial tourism, partly due to its remoteness and partly because of well-documented predator activity that made swimming or wading extremely dangerous. Local Aboriginal guides had warned Reed about unusual bull shark behavior in these waters, though their concerns were often dismissed by visiting tourists as exaggerated caution. The morning of March 18th presented ideal conditions for kayaking, with calm winds and a rising tide that would provide access to shallow channels typically impassable during low water periods. Reed's group consisted of 4 experienced paddlers, including wildlife photographer Amanda Chen, retired marine biologist Dr. Elizabeth Thompson, and adventure travel writer Marcus Hoffman. Each participant carried waterproof camera equipment and had signed comprehensive liability waivers, acknowledging the inherent risks of wilderness kayaking. Reed positioned himself at the rear of the group formation, allowing him to monitor all participants while maintaining visual contact with potential hazards ahead. His leadership strategy emphasized constant communication and predetermined emergency procedures, including specific protocols for wildlife encounters and equipment failures. The group had practiced capsizing recovery techniques in controlled conditions, though Reed privately hoped such skills would remain unnecessary during their expedition. 3 hours into their journey, the group reached a narrow channel bordered by dense mangrove formations that created a natural photography blind for observing waterbird behavior. Reed guided his clients into position for optimal camera angles while maintaining safe distances from known nesting areas. The tidal current remained gentle, allowing the kayakers to maintain stable positions without constant paddling effort. Reed was adjusting his underwater camera housing when he noticed an unusual water disturbance approximately 10 meters ahead of his kayak. The murky water made visual identification impossible, but his experience in these environments had taught him to recognize subtle signs of large predator movement. He began alerting his group to prepare for immediate evacuation from the narrow channel when the bull shark struck without warning. The 9-foot predator launched itself from the muddy bottom with explosive force, its massive bulk colliding with Reed's kayak amidships. The impact generated a tremendous crash that echoed across the mangrove canopy, while simultaneously capsizing Reed's vessel and throwing him into the turbid water. The bull shark's jaws immediately clamped around Reed's forearm and shoulder, its serrated teeth penetrating through his life jacket and into his flesh. Reed's training took over despite the overwhelming pain and shock of the attack. He used his free hand to strike repeatedly at the shark's sensitive snout area, while simultaneously kicking to prevent the predator from dragging him underwater. The bull shark's thrashing movements created a maelstrom of muddy water that made it impossible for his companions to assess the situation accurately. Jen immediately began paddling toward Reed's position, while Thompson activated their emergency satellite beacon to alert rescue services. Hoffman documented the attack with his camera equipment, understanding that such footage might prove crucial for subsequent investigation and safety improvements. The entire group had rehearsed emergency response procedures, though none had anticipated an actual predator encounter of this magnitude. The bull shark maintained its grip on Reed while simultaneously attempting to execute the spinning maneuver characteristic of its species during feeding behavior. Reed found himself being rotated violently through the water column, his disorientation increasing with each revolution. The predator's strength proved overwhelming, and Reed realized that passive resistance would prove ineffective against such a powerful adversary. Jen reached the attack site and began striking the shark with her kayak paddle, while Thompson approached from the opposite angle to prevent the predator from escaping toward deeper water. The coordinated intervention created enough distraction to cause the bull shark to momentarily loosen its grip, allowing Reed to break partially free from its jaws. However, the predator's hunting instincts remained fully engaged, and it immediately launched a second attack aimed at Reed's legs and lower torso. This time, Reed managed to grab the shark's snout with both hands, using his body weight to force the animal's head underwater while simultaneously kicking to maintain surface position. The technique, learned during his guide training, provided temporary control over the situation. After nearly 2 minutes of chaotic struggle, the bull shark finally retreated toward the deeper water beyond the mangrove roots. Reed's companions immediately surrounded him, providing flotation support while assessing his injuries. The attack had caused severe lacerations to his arm and shoulder, along with significant tissue damage and blood loss that required immediate medical attention. The group's emergency procedures proved effective, with rescue helicopters reaching their position within 41 minutes of the initial distress signal. Reed was airlifted directly to a hospital, where emergency surgery addressed his injuries and prevented permanent disability. His survival was attributed largely to his companion's quick response and his own knowledge of shark behavior during attacks. Northern Territory authorities later confirmed that bull shark activity had reached unusually high levels throughout the region, with multiple encounters reported in various estuarine environments. Marine biologists theorized that seasonal flooding had driven larger predators into shallow waters where they typically avoided human contact. Reed recovered fully from his injuries after several months of rehabilitation, though he subsequently modified his guiding activities to focus on terrestrial rather than aquatic adventures. The incident prompted enhanced safety protocols for kayaking operations in northern Australia, including mandatory predator spotting training and improved emergency communication equipment.